Story 1. Reddit posts and questions that seem innocuous but actually assume the conclusion of something, usually political in nature but not always. Story 2. When I was in college, we received military recruitment emails every final season. They were always targeted at students with low grade point averages, no financial resources, or those considering leaving school. Story 3. Police dramas. There is a staggering number of shows on basic cable that focus on police, FBI, and crime scene investigation organizations. These shows often feature a group of individuals who not only always catch the culprit in the end, but are also profoundly dedicated to doing the right thing. While this formula may work for entertainment, it presents a highly unrealistic portrayal of how most institutions operate. Story 4. Sock puppet accounts on social media are used to ensure that selected talking points receive a boost. Governments, political organizations, and commercial entities are engaging in this practice on a large scale. Story 5. Everyone can be successful if they work hard. Indeed, it is possible for any individual, but it is impossible for everyone to achieve the same level of success. Story 6. Anything that aligns with their own views will be accepted without verification or further examination beyond what is presented to them. Many individuals will vigorously defend or disseminate information that a few minutes of basic research would prove to be false. Story 7. Most of what you see on CNN, Fox News, and other news stations is propaganda disguised as news. Story 8. Anything a politician or the media discusses that evokes an emotional response. Story 9. Media headlines. Even neutral news sources dramatize coverage or address sensationalist topics in a biased manner. Story 10. The biased news coverage in the United States has led to a situation where the message is often prioritized over the facts by many media outlets. Story 11. Yellow journalism is rampant and has been for some time. Social media, film, news, music, and anything related to the military contribute to this issue. My husband is a veteran, and it is disheartening to see so many negative influences around us, including military dependents and Department of Defense civilians. Influencers, education, and practically everything we consume are affected. Our food and water quality are compromised as well. Story 12. Some subreddits on this site are significantly left-leaning, even those that aren't political. They will ban you if you have posted or commented in a right-leaning subreddit. For those curious, I spoke up against a few people in the subreddit Trump. I commented in the subreddit pictures and got banned. I deleted my comments from Trump, but the ban stayed because they asked if I had questions about it. I did, and then I got muted for 28 days. Story 13. They had psychologists and sociologists studying the best ways to influence your mind for decades. Story 14. Propaganda refers to movies, TV shows, and even some games that portray the police as heroic and justified in their use of violence against citizens. Story 15. Every cable news channel, from CNN to Fox News, is a massive private company that works closely with the State Department to project crafted narratives and create the illusion that you are an unbiased free thinker. Story 16. Approaching graduation, Americans are bombarded with credit card applications. I received 20 in just 1 week. Story 17. Religious propaganda on TikTok often features slides of a woman who supposedly converted from either Christianity to Islam or from Islam to Christianity. Frequently, the images do not depict the same woman in the before and after photos. Story 18. Education. Americans are taught that the United States is the only country on earth that has freedom, justice, prosperity, and democracy, and that everyone else is misguided at best. Meanwhile, citizens are being forced to ration insulin because it is too expensive, and legal immigrants are being deported under flimsy pretexts. Meanwhile, billionaires spend millions to get a chance to go to space for a few minutes while the working poor struggle to make ends meet. Story 19. Cop shows like The Rookie portray police officers as hardworking, fit, and competent individuals who care about legality and justice, rather than depicting them as lazy or aggressive individuals working for wealthy landowners. Story 20. Most of Russian propaganda is not about Russia or its direct enemies. It is about driving a wedge between the people living in countries Russia considers its enemies. The reason that discussions about woke, and far-right ideologies dominate public discourse in many countries is that these talking points are being deliberately enforced by foreign influence. There are many other divisions being created in a similar manner. They want to divide and pacify the West. Story 21 Movies. Carry On Netflix was my first time really seeing it since it was right in front of me. Many movies being released now are pushing narratives. Story 22. I am not sure how much it counts as propaganda versus regular advertising, but every bit of mainstream media is selling something. Everything we believe about what is normal has been sold to us, especially if you do not live in a major city or travel frequently to see things with your own eyes. Story 23. Many people quote studies without questioning who funded or conducted them. Recently, I have seen numerous posts claiming that the end of non-domicile tax rules is costing UK taxpayers billions as wealthy individuals flee overseas. This claim is based on a study by a UK-based wealth advisor who has a vested interest in reducing taxes for the super wealthy. They were unlikely to reach any other conclusion. They are not an independent body following established methodologies. I am not stating that they are wrong or right. I have not examined the data, as it is not made available, but just because a study shows does not mean that the study is impartial or reaches the correct conclusions. Story 24. Fox News is not functioning as a news channel, as most of its programming consists of opinion entertainment. This is essentially their legal defense. Story 25. The Pledge of Allegiance, United States of America. Anytime you say something aloud repeatedly, especially as a child, it indoctrinates you and ultimately makes you less likely to question the underlying themes over time. Story 26. The use of passive versus active voice in reporting is significant. For instance, if Hamas launches missiles at an Israeli hospital, it is often reported as Hamas terrorists attack Israeli hospital with missiles, killing 26 people. Conversely, if Israel does the same thing, it is reported as hospital in Gaza struck by missiles potentially belonging to the Israeli Defense Forces. 26 dead, claims Hamas. The goal is to portray these events as acts of fate, obscuring the moral responsibility of the perpetrators that the media favors, while selectively casting doubt on any allegations that may reflect poorly on the United States or its allied states. Similarly, when discussing Russia's invasion of Ukraine, people commonly frame it as a deliberate act of malice by Vladimir Putin, an illegal and criminal land grab by a power-hungry leader. However, when it comes to actions taken by the United States, such as the Iraq War or the Vietnam War, they are often described as mistakes, miscalculations, tragic errors, and other euphemistic terms that absolve U.S. leaders of responsibility. American presidents like George W. Bush are rarely labeled as war criminals or consciously imperialistic. Instead, they are portrayed as making unfortunate errors, inadvertently leading to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Much propaganda relies on framing the actions of the powerful and the established order as unavoidable or natural, avoiding acknowledgement that wars, poverty, climate change, and other crises are the outcomes of deliberate policy decisions made by leaders who choose to implement them. Story 27. I am convinced that the politics and Ask US communities are run by individuals who are anti-American, and all the top-level comments serve as propaganda aimed at ensuring this country tears itself apart as quickly as possible. Story 28. Media outlets selectively cover news, focusing on events that portray their viewpoint favorably while ignoring those that do not. If you only watch one news source that exhibits this bias, you may remain unaware of the significant events occurring in the world that could change your perspective. Story 29. Honestly, it's the memes and discussions about masculinity or feminism, as well as the street interviews that resonate. You all know they might not always be first-hand propaganda. Story 30. State policy institutes are owned by oligarch billionaires determined to diminish your wages and undermine social services. They present themselves as nice and reasonable, similar to Chief Justice Roberts. While they may appear socially center-left, they are extremely right economically. These policy institutes are conducting the bidding of the oligarchs, persuading you to weaken your own services. Story 31. Social media. The Daily Mail features blatant lies, manipulation, scaremongering, racism, and misogyny presented as news. Story 32. The news these days primarily focuses on how to feel. This influence is pervasive. Story 33. Advice. People are often too quick to accept life advice about diets, philosophy, religion, and other topics from individuals they know nothing about. For instance, those videos featuring 70-year-olds discussing their biggest regrets raise questions. There should be a level of critical thinking applied, such as considering whether one knows anything about the person providing the advice. Is this person genuinely someone to listen to? Are they attempting to influence thoughts or behaviors in a particular direction? Many podcasts exemplify this issue. While the advice may be free, the underlying goal is often to encourage listeners to adopt more rigid views to support specific political agendas. Story 34. U.S. war movies have emboldened people to discuss how successful and benevolent their armed forces are. The movies do not correlate with history, and the propaganda is so effective that some take it as fact. Story 35. Conspiracy theory videos present a direct pipeline from conspiracy to right-wing propaganda that is astonishing. Story 36. There are many police shows, legal dramas, and medical series on television because authorities want you to trust them without question. Story 37. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt is a form of propaganda used to manipulate public opinion by creating a sense of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Fear is a potent motivator, which is why it is often used by businesses and political groups to discredit opponents or spread false information. This is also why mainstream news cycles propagate relentless gloom and doom, keeping everyone on edge. Story 38. The United States military only collaborates with film productions for the purpose of propaganda. Call of Duty is United States military propaganda. Story 39. When every news anchor across the country uses the same script and the same words to report a story, it is not journalism. It is propaganda. They should be ashamed. Story 40. Television allows people to voluntarily let others intrude into their homes and lives. The same is true for smartphones. Story 41. Making jokes about topics is an early step in sanitizing and manufacturing consent. Not all jokes are propaganda, but they can be used in that manner. Story 42. Everything is propaganda. Everywhere you look, there is someone trying to influence the way you think or act. No one is immune to propaganda. Story 43. Mainstream media will never criticize Israel or Palestine. America's hands are very dirty. We have allowed Israel to commit numerous wrongdoings, but Israel controls the narrative, and despite international pushback, America protects Israel staunchly. For example, there is currently a law that could potentially impose a 20-year prison sentence and a $1 million fine on an American citizen who boycotts Israel. Additionally, pro-Palestinian college students are being deported. There is a significant effort to silence anti-Israel speech, and not enough people are concerned about it. It is already illegal to boycott Israel in a majority of states in the United States, and the government is considering increasing the penalties for it. This situation is alarming. I want to clarify that I am not discussing Israel in an anti-Semitic way. It is incorrect to conflate opposition to Israeli nationalism with anti-Semitism. This is part of the propaganda. I have nothing against Jewish people, but I do recognize the violence associated with Zionism. Groups like the Anti-Defamation League are being used to portray opposition to Palestinian genocide as inappropriate. This is all part of the propaganda. I can already see that I have received negative feedback on this, which only confirms that people are consuming the propaganda. The most effective propaganda incites anger when people hear about it. Story 44. PBS and NPR are sponsored by the military-industrial complex and the petroleum industries. In general, the technique of starting with something few people would disagree with, such as stopping the killing of babies in Gaza, and then reversing it to blame the political party most capable of ending it, is troubling. This is further compounded by college students promoting this for free, while our news media report it as a legitimate protest. Story 45. The approach of take everything easy and peace out is heavily promoted online, especially through short-form content. It is not the best advice for someone entering adulthood who must start working hard for the first time. People may become overly confident that everything will be fine without putting in effort, which is not a perspective I want to receive daily from my phone. Story 46. Many true crime shows, such as Dateline, have been accused of promoting law enforcement. The police are typically portrayed as the heroes of the narrative. Story 47. One of the latest tricks of shrinkflators is to reduce the weight, while the packaging claims X% more, even though it contains less quantity than before. Story 48. Language control is something I've noticed with the current ruling party where I live. They repeat their own phrases to control narratives, such as the opposition, our movement, the president keeps a cool head, and the opposition claws at their clothes over what we do. These phrases are repeated so often that even critics start to use them. They lie confidently and mock the other side, telling shameless lies and acting as if anyone who disagrees is unhinged or mad. Story 49. The news. In 2014, President Obama allowed the bill from the 1950s that prevented the government and corporations from propagandizing Americans to lapse. This is why all of your 2020 news was sponsored by Pfizer, including Fox and MSNBC. This is how we ended up in this situation. Consider the Twitter files. Even the dead internet theory has some valid points, though not everything is entirely right or wrong. To assert that none of it is happening is delusional. This is what social media and modern journalism are. 50% paid opinion, 30% automated accounts, 5% radical voices, 5% thoughts to consider, and only 10% actual humans trying to honestly comprehend what they are consuming. We primarily live in a state of propaganda here in America. Story 50. There are things that seem harmless on social media that attempt to skew your algorithm in a particular direction. Skibbity Toilet and the Meow Meow videos are prime examples. They have nothing to sell, so you become the product. Eventually, this can lead you down a rabbit hole. Story 51. Most people don't really understand what propaganda is. They often think of it in terms of foreign influence or specific government messaging. However, regardless of where you live, most of the propaganda you encounter is domestic, as it is domestic power that is concerned about your opinions on various issues. In the Western world, the concept of domestic propaganda is largely overlooked. Moreover, effective propaganda is not about the things you disagree with and feel outraged by. That form of propaganda resonates with someone else, and you don't need to be concerned about it because you were never its target audience. The propaganda you should be wary of is the information you agree with. This is what enables those who seek to manipulate you to succeed. Story 52. Basically, all of social media, and probably most traditional media as well, especially news, involve selling either a product or an idea intended to be relevant to voting. Story 53. Most media is an echo chamber, telling you what you want to hear so that you become a loyal listener, viewer, or customer. Politicians, religious leaders, educators, and marketers know that repeating lies makes them more believable and that people hate to admit they were wrong or misled. Some propaganda aims to change opinions or behaviors or, perhaps more subtly, reinforce the status quo. Story 54. Disgusting levels of overconsumption. Influencers create various themed baskets and showcase entire rooms filled with body care items. People often feel immune to this trend, thinking they won't consume on such a level. However, witnessing extreme consumption like that gives a false sense of virtue to the average consumer's unnecessary purchasing habits. It becomes justifiable to own multiple deodorants when influenced by someone buying an excessive amount. Story 55. Corporate branding, algorithms, emotional manipulation, and the fear of keeping you scrolling contribute to influencer culture, selective news coverage, and emotional branding through slogans, fonts, and types of music that create emotional associations. Fear-based advertising plays a significant role. To spot these tactics, ask yourself who benefits from your thoughts and whether they are based on emotion or evidence. Consider if you feel urgency, guilt, or moral superiority. Story 56. Headlines. Not necessarily their bias, but the very nature of inserting a topic into the public consciousness while not discussing other matters. This closely resembles typical cover-ups. Who cares about someone's opinions when the issue isn't even addressed in the first place? Story 57. Propaganda from the extremely wealthy. It is not conspiratorial to say they control all major news outlets. It is a fact. We could solve many of the world's issues, or at least those in the United States, by raising the minimum wage and fairly taxing the rich. Essentially, all solutions will require billionaires to become millionaires, but that is never addressed in our major media outlets. It is all rage bait. A transgender person exists. This person used a racial slur. It is all a distraction so we do not recognize the true enemy of humanity: extremely wealthy individuals and organizations. Story 58. K-pop and Thai food are often associated with cultural diplomacy. Searching for these two terms alongside the word diplomacy will yield various articles and videos on the topic. Story 59. More than anything, people promote themselves now. They believe that sales figures are somehow a mark of quality in a world where cigarettes still sell incredibly well. Likewise, they point to how everyone else likes it. We seem to have lost the capacity to think critically. An adult understands that there is no such thing as safety in numbers. Story 60. There is a tendency not to call out or recognize propaganda that reflects, reinforces, or even radicalizes your own views. Gender-related issues are almost always propaganda. For the most part, anything pro-male, even innocuous messages like encouraging you not to hate yourself for being born male, can lead to a rabbit hole of right-wing propaganda. Simultaneously, almost any girl power or vaguely feminist media is usually packaged with left-wing propaganda. Almost any discussion of civil rights is co-opted with propaganda, including transgender rights, people of color rights, and gender rights. Memes related to political figures, both for and against, are propaganda. However, calling it out often provokes anger. Search results on popular search engines are predominantly marketing or propaganda now. If you search for anything political and then search using the phrasing of the opposing side, you can easily see how the autocomplete suggestions are propaganda. Podcasts, especially those not selling a product, often make you the product, with the customer being either a political party or a foreign interest. Story 61. I have noticed many places where capitalism is ready to take advantage of new parents' fears and suggest their products as highly necessary when people lack knowledge. Story 62. Your friends and significant other are a secondary source of information. Most people do not question their closest allies. Story 63. Just how many bots and artificial intelligence are used on social media? It is all intended to make certain sentiments more popular than they actually are. Sadly, it works in shaping perceptions, and it shows in how elections play out. Story 64. Debates often involve one person presenting logical arguments while the other makes unreasonable points. It doesn't matter if the person is from the left or right wing. Most of the time, the debate is either staged or the topic is deliberately chosen to favor a specific side. Story 65. Videos of people on Instagram eating live or raw food often spark outrage, with many quick to say, "Cancel this country." However, this content is usually posted by someone seeking likes or by individuals from that country doing anything for views. Story 66. Propaganda divides for personal or ideological gain. It is pervasive, stating, "I believe people should do whatever they can to prevent America from falling into authoritarianism," qualifies as propaganda. Entertainment media has long referred to radical liberal policies, which is highly divisive as it labels liberals as them before the policy is even described. Story 67. Afterpay is normalizing hyperconsumption and prioritizing wants over needs. I will also include sports gambling, from collegiate to professional levels. The fact that athletes endorse it still troubles me and, in my opinion, diminishes the beauty of sports and fitness. Story 68. You are immune to misleading information. You are too intelligent to fall for it. You have never shared deceptive content. Story 69. CNN and Fox News primarily serve as propaganda these days. People continue to tune in and disconnect, which contributes to our current situation. Story 70. Supporters of former President Donald Trump seem unable to recognize any form of propaganda, especially when it comes from him. Trump confidently claims that the positive aspects of the economy are due to his leadership while attributing the negative aspects to President Joe Biden. His supporters consistently nod their heads in agreement, showing no sign of cognitive dissonance. Story 71. A lot of American movies are heavily edited by the United States government. One way to tell if your movie is government propaganda is to look for actual United States military vehicles, if it is filmed on government property, or if the military or government comes to the rescue. Military equipment is not free. The government makes a trade with the producers. Use of the location or equipment in exchange for the ability to rewrite the script to suit their needs. They will even make deals to finance future movies if the director agrees to their demands. If you can tolerate the poor writing throughout the movie, you can also see the United States government listed in the credits. Examples include the Marvel Cinematic Universe, everything directed by Michael Bay, natural disaster films, space movies, and children's films, all of it. There are some standout war movies that did not take the bait. You will know them because they expose the horrors of war and do not attempt to glorify it. They are the exceptions. Most of the time, if a director does not comply with the United States government, the movie does not get made. Story 72. China's TikTok promotes productivity tips, while the West is flooded with cat videos. Meanwhile, your college contacts military recruiters instead of providing mental health resources during finals, which is a form of modern propaganda. Story 73. America's abundance of police and medical dramas serves to lull the public conscience away from recognizing how deficient the justice system and medical care are. Story 74. Corporate language that emphasizes teamwork and unity in the workplace shares similar vocabulary, syntax, and tone with propaganda from the 1930s Soviet Union. In the 1990s, a human resources professional decided to adopt this approach, ushering in a new era of corporate culture under the belief that it was a revolutionary idea. Story 75. The totality of the modern equality movements raises questions about the sincerity of corporate support. Does anyone think Coca-Cola cares about transgender people? Come on, it's quite uncomfortable. At this point, any mention of equal rights or climate issues seems heavily influenced by propaganda. Story 76. Chinese propaganda. I see many individuals falling into the trap of believing China is some sort of utopia and not equally as guilty of indoctrinating its citizens as the United States is. Story 77. Prints of movies and comics displayed in your home to showcase your interests serve as a form of advertising and propaganda. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.